Welcome to episode 3 of Crashing On Podcast. Thank you to everyone who's been rating, reviewing, and recommending the podcast. And a special shout out to Elizabeth and Katie who reviewed on Apple Podcasts. I swear this is not me taking on pseudonyms and reviewing myself. I'm not saying that I wouldn't do it, but I'm just saying this time I didn't. So yeah, sorry, I got distracted. We're only 2 weeks old and we're already on the charts of TV and film and TV reviews in South Africa, UAE, USA, UK, and the Netherlands, which is crazy and so surpasses our expectations of what we thought this podcast would be. I thought it would be a mission to even get my family to listen. They still aren't, but I thought that'd be a mission, let alone other people. So, yes, once again, I just want to thank you. Today's guest is Leanne Lakshmi Phillipson. She's an old friend of mine, and she was my first guinea pig, the first one who was willing to let me test out my interview and recording skills on her. So when I say rough, I mean like really rough. This was my first ever interview. So, move around your expectations as you will. But yes, we chat about a lot of things. Movies, sitcoms, lots of things. And there are some spoilers, as there usually are, because I like to talk all over the place. So some spoilers for sitcoms that have been in public domain for years. So I'm sorry, but yeah, I will put times in the show notes, but I'm also like, come now guys. Anyway, so spoilers for Friends, How I Met Your Mother, New Girl. Also, maybe little spoilers for Doc Martin, as well as the Daniel Radcliffe series Miracle Workers. But we talk about a lot, and I'm not going to say much now. So please listen, let us know what you think, etc. I'll catch you at the end of the interview. So here's Leanne.
I generally avoid things if they are too
popular.
Not on purpose, just like
because sometimes I'm in the mood to just watch movies from like 1983 and nobody else is talking about
as one does.
and then you come out and everyone's talking about some series that I've never heard of, and I'm like, do you get around to watching Never Ever Ever?
Yeah, we binged that within like 2 days. Steve was so obsessed. I was like, so I saw you tweeting about it because you're one of my influencer people. I saw you tweeting about it and I was like, okay, this looks kind of interesting. And then I think the thing that actually made me want to watch it was a brown person on Twitter was commenting about why do we keep idolizing white males with brown women, and then they obviously said it's like a Mindy thing, and then I was like, ooh, I'm intrigued by this conversation. Now I want to watch it so I can judge for myself. And then I watched it, and then like Steve and I kind of had a discussion after, because I thought it was so well done, because as a brown person, I really resonated with her family and the way things were executed. Like, it was very well done to kind of merge being Hindu or having traditions and then also trying to be cool and be popular and blend in and acclimatize and assimilate and stuff. And I found the comment that the person had made about always putting the white male as the ideal interesting, because she's in a school surrounded by white males or males who aren't Indian. So obviously her aesthetic would be that, as opposed to, because it's what you're surrounded by, right? So I loved that show. Steve and I were just ugly crying by the last episode, like boxes of tissues next to us.
So I also think it was, because it was partly based on Mindy Carling's own life. And I think she grew up in like a predominantly white neighborhood. And I read in an article review, and they were saying that because there's such a little South Asian representation on TV, everybody expects to see themselves represented in this one girl, where that's only one person. Maybe she did only have white guys around, and that's what she idolized. Hopefully if more South Asian people are telling their story in the mainstream, you get different aspects. Or especially like Indian people in other parts of the world that aren't Bollywood Indian stuff.
Yeah. I think it's a weird way to jump, but it was what was so cool about Blood and Water, because you watch it, and I think again, we're watching it through a lens of South African Black excellence, creativity, things being done. And so we put a lot of pressure on it because we're like, it's the first Black Netflix series, rah, rah, rah. But then you watch and you're like, it's just a human story. It's just that the casting is representative of what the reality is. Like, that's what schools are like, or that's what people are living through, or that's what the people look like, you know? So it's not trying to do a thing, it just is. And that's what was so great about
Blood and Water.
And I think that's what's so great about Never Have I Ever, is like, it's just telling these human stories, and the race thing, as much as it's cool because it's representative and it's filling, but it's kind of secondary.
It doesn't feel like it's trying to be everything for everyone. But I do like how the fact that she's Hindu is not, it's not everything, but it's also, you can see how it's like an important part of her character.
Yes.
And it's like, it's normal.
And it's the perspective, and I loved her coming to terms with it as part of who she is, because I think so much of the story was her rejecting it.
Yeah.
And then like slowly towards the end being like, okay, but this is who I am, and I need to be happy with who I am. And like, I think that's normal for any teenager, regardless of culture or creed.
Because that's what I felt too. I did write a review on it, but I haven't published it yet. Or I have, but I haven't published it yet. But I was just like, we all go through this thing, like, especially when we're a teenager, we reject our culture, we reject who we think we're supposed to be, or where we come from, because it might not be cool, or it might not be what we think is cool, which, it's all other deal. But as we grow older, it's such an interesting journey, and it's nice to see something that just, I didn't feel like it was pushing it into my face. Like, there was that one guy, her friend, was like, oh no, he used to be like anti, but now he's changed. But I didn't feel like it was pushing it on me. Like, I felt like I was, like, I could see it gradually happening within her. And that was interesting. Like, I can't wait to see what happens next.
Listen, for a Mindy story, I also thought it was one of the most poignant things I'd seen in a while. Like, it was just, there were so many levels. Like, it was frivolous and teenagery and childish, but then it was also angsty and beautiful and dramatic, and then really super emotive. And like, I really enjoyed that it was super well-rounded, because you watch the trailer, or you watch knowing it's Mindy, you're expecting it to be just light fluffy things, but then it really touches a nerve. Like, it hit nerves with Steve and I on different levels, and it was just really, really cool.
I know. When it was over, I was like, I would actually want to watch this again right now. That was the vibe. But she also did remind me a lot of you.
She reminded you of me?
Yeah. I don't know. There was, not because she was Indian, but you would say to a guy, we thought you were Ago.
No, I wouldn't.
Mouse syndrome.
Not do that. I also would not walk up to a guy and be like, hey, do you want to have sex after school? So
I thought that was a dream sequence the first time that when I watched it, I was like, hey. And then it was like, she was still in that situation. Peyton Hall-Sheeda. But that guy looked old. Like, he did not look like he was a teenager. Like, all those kids are like youngsters, and then the actor's 30 or something in real life. Or like 28.
Yeah, no. She looked like the most authentic her age character. The rest of them all kind of were like, So, because you asked obviously what we've been watching during quarantine. I actually can't believe Never Have I Ever was in quarantine. It feels like so long ago.
Yeah, like a month ago.
So I was trying to work through, okay, what have I watched? And it's so fascinating because we realize, like, as much as we've been watching things that have been coming out, so like Never Have I Ever, we binged Schitt's Creek season 6, like, watch that. Miracle Workers. A lot of the stuff that we've been watching has been like comfort food stuff. So when lockdown started, we started with rewatching the Harry Potter series. Mostly because I think I was so like depressed / sleepy. I just wanted nap times, and so putting on a Harry Potter movie was like the easiest background white noise to fall asleep to. And then after that, we realized Steve had never seen the Fast and the Furious franchise, and so we started on those.
I think I watched till 3.
No, we watched up until Fast 7, the one where Paul Walker dies.
Oh, okay.
I refuse to watch beyond that point because after that, it's no longer the Fast and the Furious. Like, it's only up until that point. And then when Netflix got all the New Girls, because I had only watched up until, I think Steve and I had only watched up until season 3 of New Girl before this. So we've just been binging like New Girl, Schitt's Creek, a little bit of Old Parks and Rec thrown in there. Like very much warm, fuzzy sitcom-y things.
Yeah.
And we were saying like that's, because for us that's our comfort food, like that's our safe space, and like the world is so crazy, we didn't want to have to watch things that were overly taxing or overly demanding of emotional energies, just because we are already so emotionally drained. So that's kind of what we've been doing. And definitely more movies. And like to watch movies we wouldn't normally watch. What were we watching? Like we watched something. Oh, I bought Thor Ragnarok.
Oh, lovely.
When we were finally allowed to, when we dropped to level 4 and you were allowed to buy all online stuff, like online shopping opened up completely. I was like, oh my gosh, we really need to invest in Thor Ragnarok because it was the one we never had. And so we bought that, but then watching that made me want to watch more Kate Blanchett. So then I was like, after that, I was like, okay, now we need to watch Ocean's 8 because I want to see more Kate Blanchett. So that's what we did.
So where did you get Ocean's 8? Like where's that on?
It's on Showmax.
Oh, okay.
It was actually so cool going through Showmax because I realized for a long time Netflix was like our go-to for everything. And so we'd had the Showmax subscription, but we weren't using it because the TV we have, you can't upgrade the interface, and it's a really crappy interface on our TV. So it's like such a mission to have to search and scroll and do stuff on it.
Yeah.
But I think with lockdown and with the limitations on Netflix because of so many other streaming channels forming and like the content being limited now, we actually end up finding more cool stuff on Showmax. So as we were scrolling through that, I was like, wow, we've actually watched quite a lot of things on here, which is cool. Like,
yeah, because they're getting a lot of the movies from DSTV after, because I watched like Shazam recently as well for the first time.
Yeah.
And like I also got it on there.
Shazam.
So cute, very cute movie.
So cute.
And then I also watched Big, the Tom Hanks movie from like 1989. It also has the same sort of concept where it's like this boy and he wishes he can be bigger, and then he wakes up and he's like a grown up, and his mother's like obviously thinks he's missing, but it doesn't have the he can change back and forth, so he's just like missing for a couple of months, and then he like lives as an exec.
And it's not a body swap; it's actually him as an older person.
Yeah, it's like a 13 going on 30, but like not in the future, as in now.
Oh wow, that's cool.
Tom Hanks is really good in it. There's a really problematic part because he falls in love with this lady, like a grown lady, and they sleep together and all this stuff. I'm like, this is a 12-year-old boy. Like, he might just look like him. And then she still seems like kind of chill when she finds out that he's like a child.
A 12-year-old. Ooh. It's always so funny when you watch things that were made in like the 90s or early 2000s, just because it's so inappropriate. And you don't always realize how inappropriate it is until you go back and rewatch it. Like, I think Netflix got a movie called Waiting with Ryan Reynolds and I can't even remember. It was like this weird one of those like young adults growing up, coming of age situations. And so it's like about a group of people who work in a restaurant waiting tables and like a day in the life of type of thing. And it was so funny because Steve was like, oh, I remember this movie. And it was one of those Fridays where you can't decide what to watch. And it's the popular thing on Netflix, so you click play. But as we were watching it, there were just so many like homophobic slurs or like inappropriate misogynistic jokes. And you're like, ew, did we really think this was okay? And like when you think about not even, like that probably wasn't even 10 years ago. And it would have been okay. But now you look at stuff with such a different lens.
But when you think about things like the American Pie movies and Van Wilder, all the just horrible jokes that are in those things, and people lauded those. They were like, this is the greatest movies ever, best comedies. They were messy.
Yeah, absolute mess. We often have that with sitcoms and series that we watch or that we like to rewatch. Because like you think about How I Met Your Mother, which at the time was amazing. Then you think like, Ted's a jerk. And
yeah, I've never
Barney
liked
is
it.
Horrible. And like
the Barney thing is, I can't be a revisionist and pretend that I didn't absolutely find Bonnie freaking hilarious. I thought he was
Yes.
so funny. But obviously now you look back and like, oh.
So
But it also, I
inappropriate.
also sometimes think some of the stuff it doesn't take away from like how funny he was, but the way he
Would you
did
condone
it.
that behavior? No.
No. I still think that there's aspects of the character like how he's quick-witted and come with comebacks and stuff like that. That was funny. But the content of his jokes are now like,
It's a weird thing because the things that you would have been drawn to weren't related to, how do we say this? It wasn't, like you're saying, it's not the content. You were drawn to the fact that he was witty and he was fast and he would go through all these crazy lengths to get things done. Not that you approved of the things he was trying to get done. Like, you know?
yeah.
It's a weird thing. It's the same with Friends. Like you watch Friends and you love it and it's characters and it's warm fuzzy things because it's reminiscent of a time in your life when you were originally watching it. But you watch it now and you kind of go, especially the homophobia in Friends is so bad.
Yeah.
Like, especially with
Carol and
Chandler.
Susan.
Like, I love Chandler. Chandler's like amazing. But then he's such a homophobic character and you're just like, whoa. Joss also not great.
I don't know how I felt about Ross the first time I watched Friends. I know I liked Ross and Rachel together, but I don't remember having any strong feelings. And I rewatched it a couple of years ago with my nephew, and I was just, every scene with Ross grated me. Like there were some funny moments, but
such an irritating character.
He actually just annoyed me so much, and I always was. Did I feel this way before? I don't know. He's just really annoying to me now. But all the other characters I can deal with, but him,
No, him I cannot stand. And it's a weird thing because I had watched bits and pieces of Friends when I was younger, but I'd never actually watched the series. I wasn't invested in it like a lot of people were at the time. So when it first came out, I think it first came out on Netflix, we were like, okay, we're going to start from the beginning and watch all 10 seasons, I think it is.
Yeah.
And we were like, okay, cool, we're going to work our way through it. And we watch. And as we get, I think it's like season 4 or 5, like second or third time Ross and Rachel break up and get back together. Steve and I would have these debates because I'd just be like, I hate them together. I hated that I hated the fact that they just always felt like such lazy writing from the start. They built the characters up and like everyone had gotten their redemption arc to a certain extent.
Yeah.
He had the twins and she got married and you'd had Monica and Chandler grow and become this couple. And Joey, I can't even remember what happened with Joey, but he matured at some point because he was forced to because everybody else was.
Yeah, he moved to LA.
And then you had Ross and Rachel growing in their own ways and then all of a sudden at the end they just reverted back to like 3 years ago and it just felt like such a waste of time and energy.
It's how I also felt about How I Met Your Mother. Oh, I did not like Ted the entire time. Like I've never liked Ted. And I really love Barney and Robin together. So obviously that's also gonna taint my view a bit. But I was like, Robin had changed so much and Ted had changed so much. Not that I cared, but he had changed so much. And Barney too. But to just throw them together like some kind of season 1 bullshit was not my vibe
and then people calling it fan service when it's not really fan service. Like,
I don't know. So I still do those BuzzFeed polls where they're like, who belongs with Rachel, for example, or who belongs with Ross, and people still vote that, and I'm like, guys, really?
I think that's because we don't have line of sight of how problematic that relationship was. The fact that he stifled her, that it was about controlling her, that she was never meant to grow or be without him. Like there was a codependency that was required in order for that relationship to succeed. And if that's what you're looking for in a relationship, I suppose you see it as the ultimate. And when you're young, you think, oh, you're supposed to complete me. But I think if you get older, you kind of stop expecting that because you know you're both meant to be complete people that complement each other.
I think it was together. I think for me with Gossip Girl as well, I had that kind of thing with Chuck and Blair because I mean I started watching that when I was young and I grew up because it was at such a, you know, it started when we were like what, in matric or grade 11 or something like that. By the time it ended we were in our 20s. So like in that time, like I remember thinking Chuck and Blair were it. This is the type of couple to be. And then just realizing how toxic it is as I grew up and realized how toxic relationships like that are. And I think, it is something like maybe it's good for you at the time, but like revisiting it is scary. I think that's a good thing about rewatching shows, because the first time you watch it, you have your initial opinions. And if you watch it again later on, your opinions change. And again, it's you to think, why are my opinions changing? How have I changed? What do I think now? Why is this a trigger for me that wasn't a trigger before? It's also a form of self-reflection.
And if you have the wherewithal to be self-reflective.
Yeah, that's also true.
But it's so interesting because I was chatting to Steve because we were talking about, like I said, we're currently binging New Girl, and I hadn't seen all of it, and I think we're in season 6 now, and I can see the writers going towards the Jess Nick thing again. Yeah. And I literally said, I was like, I hate them together. And he was like, why do you feel so strongly? They're not that bad. And I was like,
I actually really like them
because
together.
everybody's
I'm like in the minority of this.
Hey?
I like them together. Actually, I don't know. I was never a Schmidt and Cece person either. I was
like he changes and he grows, and like Winston grows and becomes a different person, and Coach grows and leaves, and like they all mature in a way. Even Nick and the Megan Fox arch is just so like crazy to me. But even in that relationship, like Nick grows and matures, and he finally writes his book, and like he learns how to communicate, and like so you see all of them kind of move on, and then Jesse's still the same hijinks over the top character that isn't really like growing into that. When I said to Steve, like, I hate them together, it's because I don't think they bring out the best in each other. Whereas like Schmidt and Cece bring out the best in each other. Like Winston and Ellie bring out the best. Like you can see how they use each other to push and grow and change and for the better. Whereas with Nick and Jess, it always just seems like a regression as opposed to a moving forward.
Okay. Valid.
I mean, I have very strong views on relationships in general, so...
I get you. I don't know why I know that she annoyed so many people, and like she seems like the type of character to annoy me, but I don't know why. She never bothered me that much. And I think it was that initial relationship where I just thought that they had so much chemistry together. And I didn't see that again.
Time they get together, it's amazing. Like it's right there and it's beautiful and it's whatever. But then it's like 3 years later and you guys are still trying to have the same conversations. And so I was like, no, man, come now. Come.
That is true. So I also think that if a couple comes back together, they have to have grown similarly.
Yes. Yeah. We started watching something, but now do you think? Oh, we started watching Doc Martin.
Okay.
It's
BBC show.
Have you seen it?
Or ITV, one of those British shows.
Yeah, it's like a British show with this guy, and he's probably on the spectrum. So he's a doctor, and he used to be a surgeon who gets hemophobia. And then he can't practice as this top-notch London surgeon. So he goes to be a doctor in a small seaside village out of town. But he is cold and it's like Sherlock meets Monk or something. It's like he's just this very... like House has a warmth to him still. This guy's literally... and like this guy's literally just like... And I want to say... you would assume he was slightly on the spectrum because he's that out of touch with reading the room responses. So there's a love interest in the story. Eventually, at some point, they're in a situation and they're about to kiss, and then they kiss, and you're like, oh my gosh, it's happening, because he's like this awkward human who doesn't know how to communicate, and she very clearly likes him and he very clearly likes her, but like you just think, well, he's an idiot, so it's not going to happen. And then eventually they kiss and it's amazing. And the first thing he says after they kiss is like he's like, do you suffer from nasal congestion or something? And she's like, what? Why? And he's like, because your breath is bad, and so maybe you're sick, because he's a doctor and he's trying to diagnose. And so it's just like, I feel like we've got maybe 4 seasons in, and then I couldn't watch it anymore because as a character he wasn't growing or developing. The person you meet, and I suppose it's probably expecting too much, but if I watch something, I'm expecting characters to have a growth curve, like an arc, kind of a redemption arc of sorts. And so when you meet him, he's what people would call a dick because he just he's horrible as a person. And he goes through all these things, and then you think he's going to change, but then season 4, episode 3, he does like the same thing he did in episode 2 of season 1, and you're like, why? I can't keep watching him make the same mistakes because nothing's changing. So, yeah.
So talking about awkward couples now with medical workers, I thought there would be more that would happen between Daniel Radcliffe and that girl. Is it just me?
I thought so. Like, they were very clearly building towards... Have you seen the trailer for season 2?
I have not. But it's an anthology, isn't it?
Yes. So the
different story
season is completely different.
Yeah.
They're like set in medieval times.
Yes.
And he's like this king's son who's terrible. And so everybody's completely different characters and stuff. And it looks so interesting, but it was a weird...
I watched the first season, the first episode, and I was like, meh. And then in the last scene, when he looks at her, like they're talking to God and they're trying to like convince God to take the bet. And they said, two people fall in love, two awkward people. And then he looks at her and it looks like he's like obviously crashing and stuff. And she's like, oh, you shaved. And I was like, oh, shit, they're going to go there. And I was like, okay, I want to watch this. I want to see where this goes.
And then they keep doing it, right? Because then there's another time later on where the old prayer answerer guy comes back
Sanjeev,
in. And then, there's a whole jealousy scene. Yeah. And then there's the moment where he's about to say, where he's putting on the bee helmet.
Mm.
And you can tell he was like about to be like, if anything happens, kind of like he was going to say, I liked you, but then he doesn't. And then it just ends. And I'm like,
there's that awkward dance thing. And I'm like,
But couples without payoffs is probably not the best. Have you seen Juliet Naked?
No, I have not.
It's a movie with Rose Byrne and Ethan Hawke and Chris O'Dowd.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of those really cool, weird indie movies where basically they set up a couple, but the couple is not in the stage of life where they can effectively survive in a relationship. And so, but what they do very well is they essentially leave it for a year. So they're writing letters back and forth. And so you just hear a snippet of one letter exchange, and then like a year later you hear the snippet of the next letter exchange.
Okay.
And it's her going, sorry, I haven't written. I actually moved to London. It would be delightful to see you. And so they meet up like a year later. So you see the whole story unfold, and then a gap of a year, and they meet at a year later. And all you see is the fact that they're meeting up. But it's such like a good way of telling the story, because as the person watching it, you get the sense of they made the right call to not end up in the happily ever after initially, but that it was the mature thing to do because now they might still have their happily ever after. I don't know if I'm making sense.
Oh, yes. Okay. So you mean that it might not have happened in the beginning because it wouldn't have worked, but later on.
Yeah, like the fact that they were both in the space to acknowledge like now was not the time. And so, but a year later, the fact that they're meeting up gives the viewer hope that like now they will go forth and be this happy couple. And I think that's such a cool way of doing it. Because I feel like with storylines, there's like you give the people the payoff, which is the happily ever after, or you go for the shock value where you give people nothing. And then it's terrible because you feel like you wasted your time.
Yeah.
Or you do the weird in-between thing where it's like it might not be working, but there's a hint that it's going to work in the future. Like that hopeful, so you left hopeful. And I suppose I prefer that than the nothing ever happens and you wasted my time.
So I suppose we could say they're medical work because they kind of end hopefully. Because, I mean, they're dancing together. What else?
Yeah.
Maybe. But I don't feel like that guy will ever make a move. I don't know.
Listen, the whole thing was that he actually built up the courage to ask her to dance.
Yeah, but that took a whole season. How long did it take him to ask him like out? They're just like those people, but I feel like she might do it.
Yeah,
like the characters in the world that they are.
Yeah, like they were mirroring each other.
Those two killed me. I was like, no, man.
Didn't you think he looked like a weird cross between Jughead and Fat Schmidt?
I think he definitely looked like Jughead. I don't know so much. But I saw Jughead, definitely. Like, I was like, he looks like an
Especially the side
older.
profile. I was like, oh
Yeah.
my gosh. It was very strange.
Taking it back to Never Ever Ever, how was Carmilla with Riverdale?
Oh, where she got so hooked on it.
How old are these teenagers? This is a murder mystery. What is this show? So brilliant.
Oh, I just like, I love, the other thing I love about Never Ever Ever is the fact that like they developed the side characters.
Yeah, it's like everybody felt real, even the friends.
Yes, they all got given like a story and a purpose. It wasn't just miscellaneous extras.
Yeah. And like they all seem to be struggling with their own things. Okay, for most of them it's like parents, but still, they all seem to have their own problems separate to Devi. Even like the mom. Yes, she was struggling with the daughter, but she was also struggling with the fact that her husband died.
Yes. Oh, that scene where they talk about the scene where she sees the motorbike and she wants to sell the motorbike, and then they do the flashback to when
Yeah.
he bought it. And the flashback to when he bought the house.
House.
With the YouTube. It's a beautiful day.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So well
No,
done.
that show did gut punches really, really well. Because you'd be like laughing and then all of a sudden like it would turn and you'd be like,
The scene on the
crying.
beach, I was dead. I was like, nope, this is it for me. I'm crying. Even when she was playing the cello or whatever for the
Yeah.
uncle.
So like you're crying and then John McEnroe shows up and then you're laughing. Like what is happening?
It's so odd that like it's just so odd that it worked. Like it could have just been stupid. It could have just sounded like
Yeah.
dumb. Or like he would have sounded like he was talking down to her or something. But it just worked so well. It's like you think
No,
Mindy will be like the narrator of that show, and they're like, nope, John McEnroe.
No, it was very well done. It's actually so interesting because I remember when Mindy had started the Mindy project, one of the things, sorry, and like I'm segueing slightly, one of the things she said was that she wrote Mindy to be a character you wouldn't like. Like having your protagonist be someone that's not really likable. And it was so interesting because I saw a similar thing with the Devi character.
Yeah.
She gets so annoying by halfway through that you kind of side with everybody else.
Yeah.
And it's such an interesting narrative device because then you see the way, I've always been fascinated by the way writers can turn who you root for.
Yeah.
Because you start and you root for her and then you like, oh, this girl is a mess. So then you root for everybody except her. And then you kind of turn again and then start rooting for her as well.
I don't know if you watched the recent Emma.
No, I wanted to.
But the book Emma, that's sort of like the concept of it. It's this character where Jane Austen described as everyone else will hate her, but I will love her. But she's this rich, spoiled girl. She does her own thing. She just lives her life. It's obviously Clueless as well. It's based on Emma. But Clueless does it very well because it makes you like the character. So I think it's like the whole thing is that, you will go through phase like, do I like her? You're not meant to like her, but you do. And then like you see it from another point of view and you're like, no, but maybe she's not nice. But then she goes to this redemption arc, but you still root for her. Like even through that redemption. With a lot of characters, if you don't like the character, go through redemption arc and you will still be like, you're still a piece of shit. But what I think with Devi and what I think also worked with Clueless is that the actors that played them did it so well. I think that if anyone
vulnerability
if somebody else had played that role, it might not have had that same effect that she had.
Thank you so much for listening. Once again, all the info about the recommendations, everything that we mentioned will be in the show notes. That was Leanne Lakshmi Phillipson. You can find her at _Lakshmi_L on Twitter and L_Lakshmi on Instagram. But once again, it will be in the show notes. You can find me at Caryn Welby on Instagram and Caryn Welby's with an S on Twitter. And you can find the podcast at @CrashingOnPod on Twitter, crashingonpod.com, and send any feedback to crashingonpod@gmail.com. Also follow us on Twitter. We've been doing all these fun polls and questions and chatting about the stuff that we spoke about in the episode. So join us on there and become part of the community. All episodes are edited and produced by Rebecca Barches. And don't forget to rate and review on Apple Podcasts. Thanks so much for listening.